Welcome to the True Story London podcast. I'm Michelle Toth. In this podcast, we listen to a true personal story told live at one of our shows in London, followed by a conversation with the storyteller about their background, process, story themes, and more. Today's storyteller is Martha McBrier. She's telling us about the time she received a terrifying warning from one of her students. Martha is a brilliant comedian and storyteller who manages to have us in stitches while also presenting a story with some truly frightening stakes. Afterwards, we'll dive deeper into what makes her such a talented storyteller, how deafness has led to her evolution as a performer, her as yet unfulfilled dreams of being a quote-unquote proper writer, and more. But first, let's listen to her story recorded live at 21 Soho.
You never forget the first time that somebody tells you they're about to kill you. It impacts your day. For me, that was February 1999, when I taught in a college in Cumbernauld at the time, and I taught a subject called life skills. Now, I don't know what a life skill is now, let alone then, but I optimistically taught it to post-16 learners, many of whom were disabled in some way, so quite vulnerable. So this cold evening, it's about 4:30 p.m, I'm tidying away the felt tip pens. Life skills, I have to tell you, involves an inordinate amount of felt tip pens. And one of my students appeared in the doorway wanting to speak to me. It was Robert, a tiny, painfully thin young man with a little thing on his upper lip that was threatening to be a moustache. And he said, "Martha, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to kill you." I said, What, Robert? "Yeah, I'm really sorry, Martha. I'm going to have to kill you, and I haven't got a lot of time." I said, "Robert, could you walk me through that?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I've been trying to kill you all week. Have you not noticed?" I had not. I said, tell me more, Robert." He said, "Well," he says, he pointed to the window. "Do you see the rugby pitch outside?" I said, "I do." He said, "Do you see that weird guy wearing a ski mask walking up and down the rugby pitch?" I said, "I do not." He says, "Well, that's a shame." He said, "Because that's the guy that I've been seeing for a fortnight that says I've to kill you." And I thought, oh, fuck. And he says, "If I don't kill you, he'll kill me." And he said, "I have to do it by tomorrow." Now, as a teacher, I understood the pressure of a deadline. I said, "Robert," I said, "thanks for telling me." I said, "But, you know," and I'm improvising now, I said, "Robert, it's kind of getting to 4:45 now. There's not a lot we can do at the college just now." I said, "So here's a thought. Why don't you go home, relax and have a lovely night, and tomorrow you and I will find a way forward for this. What do you say?" He says, "I knew you'd understand." And he left. Now, there is nobody else in the building at this point. And I am beside myself, and I do the only thing I can think of to do, which is to phone my sister who works in mental health. Her name's Margaret. I've always called her Mags. It's been quite the time saver over the years. So call her, and I managed to get her. I say, Mags, you'll never guess. I says, one of my students has just said he's been seeing a guy in a ski mask and he needs to kill me. She said, that's great. I said, what, Mags? You getting it? He's killing me. She says, that's great. She says, you must have a real rapport with that young man. I said, yeah, it was kind of special, yeah. I said, Mags, what am I going to do? She says, well, go and find him. I say, what? She says, go and find him. Go on, she says. Have you any idea how scared he must be? I said, well, I do have an inkling as it goes, yeah. She says, go and find him. She says, don't make this about you. I go out to find him, and Cumbernauld is a very, very scary place. It's got lots of tunnels and underpasses, and it was flashing capital of Europe 3 years in a row. And it's like Sleepy Hollow, but without the fucking charm. I'm going round looking for Robert, and then I stopped, and I realised my sister had said something really powerful to me. Robert was the one having the scary experience, not me. And I thought, that's really compassionate, that's real empathy there. And then I wasn't scared of Robert, I was scared for him. So I look around to see if I can see him. I can't see him at all, and I get flashed at twice. So I make my way home, and the next day I get into college early, and Robert's already there. Because this is D-Day, this is Kill Martha Day, and he's telling everybody that'll listen. So my line manager whisked me away to the staff room to keep safe. And we were huddled behind the door, not quite knowing what to do. And then we hear this. Martha, let me in. Let me in. My line manager screams, it's the ski mask guy. I said, he's not real. Martha, let me in. It's Mr. Innes, the health and safety officer. I've came up the stairs and I've not got my inhaler. I need to do a risk assessment. So he came in and did the risk assessment, and I had to be suspended for my own safety while they tried to find Robert and get him the help that he needed. But my sister's compassion has really influenced me, and now I work in suicide prevention. Yeah, and I'm really, really good at it. Hardly anybody dies. And I often wonder what became of Robert, because I never saw him again, but unfortunately, he didn't pass life skills. Thank you.
Martha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's so good to see you. How does it sound hearing that story back?
Do you know what always kind of surprises me? They're laughing, because it kind of doesn't occur to me till I hear it. And then I think, that must be funny. And there is one bit that I kind of guessed was funny, but the rest not so much. So it's quite a surprise to hear people laughing.
Is that right? Is that just your natural way of processing and taking us through what happened, which was a pretty scary experience?
Yeah, to be fair, it was. And at the time, I was bricking it. I really was. But I'll give you an example. So recently, I did this course on writing for radio, and I had written this thing that I thought was like high drama. And I handed it in, and the tutor said, yeah, that was good. I really liked it, really funny. And I said, what? And he said, yeah. He said, that's good dialogue. I hope keep that going right through. And I was like, the relationship's breaking up and like sad things are happening. And then I thought, oh, whatever, I'll just finish it.
I think it's just your style.
I think it's a Glaswegian thing.
Is it?
Glaswegians, Scottish people generally, but Glaswegians are great storytellers, and you cannot stand at a bus stop in Glasgow, but you will get someone's life story. They're a complete stranger, and you will get their life story, and they will demand yours. And that's how it's done. That's how you live
I think
in
I
Glasgow.
would love it.
You would
immediately.
Americans love it.
Yeah.
London, not so much. I mean, you try doing that at a bus stop in London and you'll find, you'll lose your liberty really quite readily. But some things, when you're in that moment, you maybe don't see the kind of humour or the comedy in it, but, other people can.
So that is so interesting to me, because I thought for sure that was crafted, because it's so tight and it flows so beautifully, and it lets you laugh all the places you need to because it's so frightening. And I thought for sure this was edit after edit after edit after edit. And that's what I wanted to ask you about. But it sounds like it's just how you see the world.
Well, that's just how I told the story.
Yeah.
And I wish I could do it. I don't really write. Mm-hmm. I want to be a writer, tragically, but I don't write. I can't write. I can only write by telling.
So super verbal and very much just you're processing it, and then you say it out loud and it takes the shape it takes.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself extroverted or
No,
no,
not at all. I really am very introverted. I do have little extroverted points, because obviously if you're going to stand and speak publicly, you need a level of extroversion to do that. But I've learned that over the years. I wasn't always that way, and I'm painfully shy, and I think socially awkward, but I am definitely an introvert.
I have found in my work, the introverts are often the best public speakers. And it seems like it has something to do with, I don't know if it's about control, but there's an environment that they have control over where it's an audience and I'm speaking, but it's not the give and take, the back and forth that an extrovert can sometimes really shine in those situations. Speaking as a 100% extrovert, I can tell you that there's a real liability, because extroverts kind of need to communicate, need to speak in order to think.
Yeah.
Whereas an introvert, it sounds like you have this ability to formulate your thoughts and then bring them forward
I think
quickly.
That's exactly right. I think I'm probably more thoughtful. I think about things a lot, and I think about them in my head, and things are a lot safer in my head than they are in real life. And certainly people are a lot safer in my head. So I suppose it is that, but that's really interesting.
Were you always funny?
When I was young, we were all kind of little entertainers.
Who's we?
My siblings. So we were really poor, working class. It was not an easy upbringing. And there were 8 of us and 2 died. And we were always having like our electricity disconnected and things like that. So we had to kind of entertain each other. So me and my 2 brothers had a little troupe called the Wee McBriers. And we would go round the neighbours, and my brothers could both play guitar, and I would sing, and we would do impressions and little comedy sketches that we made up, and the neighbours would feed us. and we would take it all home and give it to the rest. So,
oh my gosh.
I suppose that's where that came from. And I was always quite a good mimic. At school, people would say, do the teacher. And I would impersonate the teacher, making it way more elaborate. So I liked that. So I suppose that's kind of where it came from. I don't really see myself as funny. I think I'm deadly serious. and really, and sometimes I think, I'm going to say this and it's going to come across rude, but this is how I feel. And then somebody will laugh and I'll be like, that's me, I'm funny. Yeah, so yeah, that was me just being funny.
Well, this is such an example of a serious situation that you infused with all of this, what we experienced as humor. I think that the humor lets your audience be able to stay with you because you give us that release of the tension so consistently. So I thought for sure that was deliberate. It's probably deliberate, but on an intuitive level. Like you just kind of sensed that people are going to be too scared to stay with my story if I don't make a joke here.
I wish I could sit here and say, oh yes, that's my strategy of storytelling. I build the tension, and I wish I could say that. I just say it like it happened, and I try not to waffle. So when I first would say it, everything would be there. Because I do remember things that people say to me at odd moments. For example, one of the first times I ever spoke to someone who was going to take their own life, I was kind of worried about it and, kind of thinking, this has to go well. This has to be where he does not take his own life or he gets help or something. So all of this is in my mind, but this poor man, and he was sobbing. You know that way when people are emotional and they can't speak, their voice constricts.
Yes.
And they can't speak. So I'm listening to him on the phone. He said, I've come to this train station, and he said, I'm going to take my own life. I'm going to do it. And it was really quiet. And he said, do you know, now that I've said that, he said, it's like time stopped. Everything is really eerily quiet. And I said, you do know they're on strike, sir? And he started to laugh. And he says, do you see the way my luck runs? I said, they do say check before you go out. He said, I didn't check.
Sorry.
And there he was, crying and laughing at the same time. And then he told me all the things that had led up to this moment. And I spoke to him for about 2 hours. And he did go and get help. He got to that point where that was not his only option anymore. And that was not the overwhelming feeling at that point.
Yeah. Wow.
It just these things. And I didn't build that tension. That was real. And I felt the tension and I was so tense talking to him. I'm not going to not be genuine, and I'm not going to make it more dramatic than it already is.
Yeah.
He's at a train station. He's going to maybe try and kill himself. So I'm not going to say, yeah, that happens when, we're at a crossroads in life. Or I just said, yeah, they're on strike. So
What a great end to that story. So you grew up in a family of 6 siblings. You lost 2.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
yeah.
So big family and some struggles.
Yeah.
And how did you get to this place of being a performer?
Well, we lost our parents quite young.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then I was, oh no, don't be, because they were hellish, really. And my father was an alcoholic and my mother was a psychopath. So, that is rich in comedy vein, you got to admit. So we, as siblings, we took care of each other.
And where were you in the age order?
Well, I was third oldest, but the oldest girl, so that makes you the oldest, really.
Totally. I'm the oldest girl, too.
Yeah,
so,
you're the oldest.
Of 5, yeah. So.
Yeah. And then we grew up, we got older, and my brothers were in bands and things like that. And then I always had it in my mind, I'd like to be a writer, but couldn't really write, not properly like writers can write. And I thought, well, if I do something and get known for it, somebody will read something that I've written when I ever get round to writing it. So then I started doing stand-up, and I used to just banter with people. I didn't really have any jokes. Well, I had like 4 I thought, well, I can't do all this joke writing. I have this thing, I can say it. I just can't sit down and write it like a proper writer. So I bantered, and that was kind of what I was known for, just being able to like not have a show. And then I would say to people, the show's going to start, and then I would go off on a tangent and speak to people and organise things and do all sorts of things. And then I would run out of time and I have to leave because I'm sorry, I couldn't give you a show. So that was my kind of thing. And then just after that, I got an unusual brain tumour called an acoustic neuroma. You don't really know you've got it. I mean, it's not cancer, it's not malignant, isn't it? The word to use. But I was starting to gradually lose my hearing.
Oh.
And that's quite a big thing, especially if you communicate for a living. Because my other job, I was in teaching, counselling, all that kind of thing, working with people. So hearing, kind of important. It was upsetting. It got really upsetting. And I thought I was saying to people, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. And what I was actually saying was, I can't fucking hear you! And I thought, right, I need to go and find out what's going on. And that's when they said, oh, you know that thing we thought was earwax? It's actually a tumour. It's not really dangerous, but if we don't do anything, you will die from it. And I was like, and they said, what we'll do is we'll watch. And if it gets to a certain length, we'll have no choice but to do something. It grew and grew, but my hearing got worse. And then in my left ear, I've got some genetic thing. I mean, a lot of people inherit property from the family. I got hearing loss and heart disease.
Oh, no.
So it got worse and worse and worse. And then my confidence went. And then I couldn't perform anymore because I couldn't hear.
Whoa.
And my partner got me into storytelling because he said, you can do that.
That's a really interesting way to discover that your comedy could be done by interacting with people, by having that improvisational ability, which is so impressive. But once you couldn't hear what people were saying to you, you needed to shift and find some other way to express yourself. Yeah. And even if you aren't trying to be funny, it comes across so natural and seamless in the way you tell this story and other stories I've heard you tell.
Well, thank you. But like that, it was at that point when I was doing storytelling and just was mesmerised by looking at other storytellers and just really getting into the story. So like you say, it wasn't about being funny. It was just, I think I could tell stories.
Yeah.
I still can't write. Still want to be a writer. So that's sad.
So when you say you can't write, do you mean that sitting down with a pad of paper and a pen, nothing comes out?
Nothing.
Or sitting down at a computer and a keyboard, nothing?
Nada.
And you've tried a bunch of different things too.
You name it.
Okay.
You name the course. I meditate, I visualise, I bought Final Draft, I haven't opened it.
It's not your mode.
It doesn't work. And yet I look at other people rattling away, I think, oh, wow, I wish I could do that. But if I tell you it, then I can write down what I say. Yeah.
So you could tell it, maybe voice record yourself or even just get it out and then be like, oh, I know what that was. And now I can jot it down.
I have no talent, so make sure you say that. This has nothing to do with talent. This is just the only way. That's all I've got.
But you're so talented. And I think what I'm finding fascinating is just, I wanted to ask you about your process and all this stuff. And you're telling me about your process, but it's so rooted in who you are and your life experiences.
But that's all I've got. I've got no imagination.
What?
No imagination. I can't write. I've no confidence.
Okay,
and I'm not good with people.
All right, we're going to cover each of these in turn.
So that's all I've got.
Okay, wait. Tell me about no imagination, because there's a line I love in your bio about living an eventful life. And I'm fascinated by people who seem to have a lot of things happen either to them or around them. And so you seem like one of those people who's had stuff happen. So does that replace your so-called lack of imagination? Just a bunch of things that happened?
Just loads of things happen. And I've lived in interesting places. I've been around interesting people and I've been in very interesting jobs. So I just report on it, really.
Yeah.
And all the stuff I write has happened. It had a basis in reality. It was something that happened.
Sure.
Even when I think I'm writing fiction or drama.
But this idea of imagination, it's interesting to think about. Some people just make things up whole cloth. And then other people go out in the world, as you've done, and live in interesting places, go after interesting jobs, find the interesting people, and interact with all of them. So wait a second. What do you think makes a better life?
Well, I would rather be Stephen King.
Yeah.
You know, there he is. Nothing has ever happened to him. Nothing. But he has imagination. And so all these amazing things that torture your dreams for years, that's what I wanted to be.
I think that Stephen King is an admirable person to want to be, but I think I'd rather be Martha.
You would probably have more fun going to the pub with Martha.
Okay.
But that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be, you know, those fabulous people that sit and imagine and sit.
Yeah.
I hate these people. But that's who I want to be.
Okay. Do you still want that?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I never give up hope, you know.
So wait a second. You also said you have no confidence. Is that a lifelong thing or pursuit?
Yeah, I think it's always a lifelong thing. But as you get older, you come to terms with things and things are a bit better. But the hearing definitely changed me for sure. And even now, and it's not surprising to see deaf people withdraw. If I'm sitting with a group of people, I won't hear. You know, I'll only be able to hear maybe 40% of what's going on, and I'm only paying attention to like 30% of that. So in some situations, it's hard. And people go, hearing aid, as if it's a cure. If hearing aids were a cure for deafness, there would be no deaf people. And I try and explain that to people. It just helps. Right. It really helps. And if I haven't got it in, forget it. And I always think I'm going to get like murdered at a tube station and not be able to hear the threats. Because I always take it out when I'm on tube, because the noise is, especially when you've not heard noise like it for a while. A few times I'm sure people were trying to do something nefarious and I just didn't catch it. I'm like, what? Say again? And if you're going to mug somebody and they go, oh, sorry, could you say that again? Then you might think twice about, I'll leave you with your phone tonight and I shall go elsewhere.
That can be isolating or make it harder to maintain your confidence if you're not able to connect with people as easily. So Martha, you said that there were 4 things that you were not particularly good at. You said you didn't have imagination, lacking in confidence, not so much talent, the kind of talent you want. You're obviously super talented, but not the writing talent you want. And the other one is being bad with people.
Yeah.
Okay, so this writing talent, you've let us know, you just really struggle to do the actual physical act of writing.
Yeah.
But you've come up with some hacks, some workarounds where you can tell the story and then capture it. So that's pretty creative. What about this bad with people or not being comfortable with people?
Yeah, I think I'm good with people who are in a crisis. Or I'm good with people in the work situations that I'm in where you need to be with people and really support them and back them up and hold them up. What I'm not good at is walking into a room and saying hello to everybody and knowing what to say to somebody. So if somebody comes up and goes, hi, I'm Michelle, I go, oh, okay. I'm not. So social situations are always a worry.
And social situations are, especially if you're in London and not in Glasgow, where people are going to stay maybe at a little bit more of a surface level and you don't have anything to grab onto. Like you're clearly excellent at handling situations where there's a little bit more drama going on, a little bit more at stake. When there's stakes, when there's like something serious happening, you seem to rise to it and be able to like engage. And then maybe when it's small talk and simple social situations, they're not as intriguing for you or something. I don't know. Is there any possible truth to that?
I think I know how to do that. So I know how to be nice to somebody and support them and help them. Yeah. And I learned that and I'm trained and I know it works. So I'm always hoping if I go to a night out or a party that somebody needs like first aid or they're crying in the loo or something, or they need an indigestion tablet, because I can go right there and be that person. But
you need a
it's
catalyst.
Not just so easy to be you're okay if you're not useful. I suppose that's what it is.
Yeah.
I think I only feel good when I feel useful.
Sounds like you get confidence from the training you've had and the examples you have to look at where you have helped people when they've been in need and been in crisis. So now you have confidence from that and skills and training. All I would say is you can apply all the same stuff to social situations.
Certainly, if I can get people to the point where they'll tell me their story, then I'm like, without me having to say anything, or if I can get them to tell me something about their day. That's why I love storytelling, because you watch somebody pouring their absolute heart out with something, and something that makes you feel, oh yeah, I relate to that. I know how she felt, or I know why she did that or he did that. I get that. I totally get that. And also it's life, and it's true, and it's kind of beautiful. It's dreadful, but it's kind of beautiful as well.
We so have that in common, and it's so much more interesting than small talk.
Yeah.
All right, so now we've established that you weren't trying to be funny, but there was just so much natural humor that sort of emerged in the telling of the story. When you set the scene for hiding in the staff office and the health and safety officer is coming up the stairs, like, you do a brilliant job of managing the tension and like keeping the stakes really, really high. And is that very intentional? How did you build that into the storytelling?
But I might make a note of that for future because that's what happened. I mean, again, this is what I mean about not having imagination. I don't know if UK, maybe not so much, but certainly in Scotland, any health and safety officer had things the matter with them. They had many, many health issues, and you used to kind of look at them and think, you're in charge of health and safety? One time another thing happened at the college, and we tried to phone the health and safety, and they said one guy's off sick and the other one's just sitting with a pasty. So, and that was pretty much the way it is. So all health and safety people in Scotland have things wrong with them, and they do not inspire confidence that they could keep you healthy and safe. And bless him, he had that. And of course he smoked like a lum as well. And he had obviously had to take the stairs because the lift was broke because it never worked. And there he was trying to do a risk assessment. And I just wanted to get him an ambulance, really.
Sometimes when we do these conversations, it can be helpful to ask someone to kind of break down how they approach things, and other people can learn from it. But in this case, we would have people be a natural, intuitive storyteller as you are. So mostly we're just going to come away admiring you.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. That means a lot to me. I think because with true stories, you cannot help but go back there.
Yeah.
And then when you go back there, the feelings are there. And I think maybe, I'd like to think that comes over, that, people will go there with me because I'm there. I'm there when I'm telling it. What I do like is feedback. So if I say to somebody, if I tell you this, or if I play this to you, tell me if it makes sense. And that's when somebody will say, yeah, it does. Yeah, well, that's...
I think listening to this story multiple times, getting ready for this conversation, I felt like I was at a masterclass for this type of storytelling. And I mean that with such sincerity. I think you've got a real gift. And maybe it is that it's a gift sort of born of all the life experiences and the culture you grew up in and the way you've approached your work and your creativity. So I think there's something very magical there.
When I leave here and I walk to the tube, the words masterclass will be ringing in my ears, and I don't care how lost I get.
Excellent. It's such a gift to be able to be receiving all of this brilliance that you bring to us every time you grace a stage or sit and have a conversation like this. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, it's Ellis here, the producer of the True Story London podcast. Just jumping in at the end to say thank you very much for listening to this episode, which was the season finale of the 3rd season of the podcast. Make sure you're subscribed to be the first to know as soon as episodes go live for season 4. And if you haven't done so already, why not check out some of our past episodes? We've got 3 whole seasons of brilliant stories and interviews. And if you're a fan of the podcast, we'd love you to consider giving a positive review on your podcast app or recommending it to a friend. The True Story London podcast is hosted by Michelle Toth. It's produced by me, Ellis Ballard. Our theme music is by Sea Noise. Live recordings are provided by Laughing Around and recorded at 21 Soho. For more information, you can visit truestorylondon.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again for season 4.